Does Agentic AI have a security problem? Some think it does. Let's talk about that, including some of the best practices and solutions that are coming to light now. Welcome back to AI Insights Innovation, the one place where you can understand the true application of AI technology for the enterprise. I'm your host, David Linthicum, internationally known AI expert and analyst with theCUBE Research. Let's get to work. So agentic AI systems are AI systems that set and pursue their own goals, have unique cybersecurity risks. They're more autonomous than traditional automation and can make independent decisions, which changes how organizations must defend, monitor, and govern these systems. So we've never seen something as pervasive of this in all my time in enterprise technology. In other words, when we secured things, they were normally monolithic. We did have distributed systems and we did have agentic systems, but now with agentic AI, there are new challenges that cybersecurity experts must face in how we're going to rethink security to make sure these things don't give up proprietary data. People can't get access to the knowledge engines that are built within these agents. So we have a new set of complex challenges that are in our way right now. So let's look at each of the challenges. First, we have attack surface expansion. Agentic AI systems interact autonomously with APIs, data sources, and other cloud components, creating more entry points for attackers. The complexity and connectivity of these systems offer new vectors for exploitation compared to traditional rule-based automation. So here we are again, where the attack surface of an agentic AI system, or basically any number of agents that are running independently, expands greatly. And the attack surface is going to be inconsistent. So in other words, from agent to agent, we're going to have to deal with attack surface patterns that are also very different from agent to agent. And so we're going to have to customize those security systems for the particular attack surface that these agents are displaying. So that becomes a challenge. So next would be emergent and unpredictable behaviors. AI agents can take unexpected or unintended actions, making it difficult for security teams to anticipate and prevent risky behaviors. So unexplicability and it determines traditional static security controls, requiring more adaptive defenses. And so, in other words, since they carry out dynamic behavior, in other words, they don't carry out pre-programmed functions, they're changing their behavior all the time because they're AI systems. They're driven by small language models, or in some cases, large language models. They're adapting to their environment, which is what they need to do as agentic-based agents. However, that becomes a unique security challenge because as they adapt and change their behavior, we also have to adapt the security frameworks that operates around the agents. And so cybersecurity experts are finding that's a difficult challenge. So next, heightened risk of manipulation and things like prompt data injection, things like that. Agentic AI systems are susceptible to manipulation in direct prompt injections or data poisoning, allowing attackers to influence agents' decisions and potentially drive malicious actions. These attacks can occur not just through direct interaction, but through compromised content or external sources. And so in other words, we have prompt injection where we can poison the agentic system. And if there's a vulnerability in there, for example, a bank one time exposed their chatbot to all their customers. Well, one of their customers was smart enough to figure out that they could tell the system that was the AI system that was driving the chat to send them a check for $10,000 every month because they left that exposed. And so there's different vulnerabilities that are going to occur with AI systems. And you're carrying those vulnerabilities over into agentic AI. So you kind of have a double trouble here. In other words, you have the vulnerabilities of what AI systems really kind of bring to the table. And in other words, the benefit versus the challenges in securing these systems. But the complex distributed nature and dynamic nature of these agents makes this almost in some instances impossible because we have to dynamically change our security postures around how these agents are deploying, not only now, but how through their change of behavior and their change in priorities is going to make them more difficult to secure ongoing. So next would be auth identity and privilege model complexity. AI agents blur the line between users and service accounts, requiring new strategies for authentication, authorization, and least privileged access. So fine-grained, context-aware Permission models become necessary when certain potential damage from compromised agents or overly permissioned agents are there. And so we have to think about this in terms of also providing dynamic capability in dealing with identities and dealing with authorization of those identities. Definitely identity access management is going to be typically the preferred solution here, but we have to also make sure that all the agents that are appearing on these networks, you got to remember these agents can run all over the place. They can run in a heterogeneous environment, some of them running in the cloud, some of them running on a device, some of them running in an automobile. And our ability to identify and manage security through the identity and access management capabilities of a good IAM system is going to be an absolute necessity. But we also have to look at the privileges that we're giving these particular agents, because they can be exploited if we're over-privileging these systems, or if we're giving those agents too much power. They can be vectored into causing an attack. And finally, monitoring our, explainability and incident response challenges that are there. Standard logging and monitoring are insufficient for this. Understanding and auditing the agent's autonomous decisions require advanced explainability and traceability tools. Security teams need new playbooks for investigating, attributing, and remediating incidents driven by AI agents. So again, we have to figure out what happened, what occurred, and the ability to get to the source of the problem within these agentic systems. So we have to have explainability. In other words, if they're making a decision, why was the decision being made? What part of the AI model was traced to make that decision? And what security issues need to come into play to support that decision? So if something goes wrong, or we're breached or attacked or things like that, and these agents I think are going to be attacked every day, you need to be able to figure out what occurred, and your ability to have log files, your ability to have traceability, your ability to have governance mechanisms that are looking at what occurred to these agents as not only a single agent, but dozens, sometimes hundreds of agents that are part of the agentic system is going to be an absolute mandatory capability. So what does this all mean? Well, agentic AI deployments fundamentally reshape cybersecurity by introducing unpredictable actions, manipulating risk, complex privilege management, expanded demands. Defending these systems requires drastically updated tools and strategies. In other words, we got to get our A game in on this stuff, security people. So in other words, if we're going to defend these systems and put a comparable, a competent security system around them, we have to think in the ways that they're going to change their requirements. And so they're going to have dynamic capabilities. They're going to have expanded attack vectors. They're going to have expanded attack surfaces. And they're going to need a dynamic security system that's able to adapt around the way in which these things need to function. So it's never going to be a single agentic AI security framework we're going to use each and every time. It gets into the "it depends" answer that everybody hates, but I think that's the answer. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on why the agents are developed. It depends on what the data is innate to the agents and how we're protecting the data. It depends on the governance systems that we're leveraging and the ability to deal with compliance around laws and regulations. All comes into play. And I suspect these are going to take probably 3 to 4 times the amount of time and money to spend on the technology and the talent to get these things in a secure state that they need to be in order for them to get utilized. And right now, my fear is that people are running ahead with the agentic AI stuff. In other words, they're trying to deploy stuff very quickly. And there's lots of new tools and technologies out there that allow them to do that. And certainly all the cloud providers support it. Most of the enterprise technology providers support it, which is all well and good, but the security and the governance have to keep up with that. And that's my big concern, is that they're not going to keep up. We're going to have these agentic systems that front some very important business systems and governance systems, and they're going to be breached because the security capabilities weren't built into the agentic AI system. We're trying to use traditional security approaches and technology to secure these systems. That won't work. So we need to think differently about how we're going to secure these environments, and it's going to come with some planning and it's going to come with some strategy. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check out my InfoWorld blog. Also check out my other stuff here on theCUBE, and check out what we're doing at theCUBE. Love to have you reach out and let us know what you're doing around Agentic AI and with security. So until next time, you guys stay safe. Cheers.